the Bridges Career Exploration software tool, and so you're going to be going through this website and answering all sorts of questions about your strengths and your interests, and in return it's going to give you a really extensive list of career ideas along with a ton of information about each career and how to get there, what kind of schooling's involved, interviews with people in that field, and it's a really, really great tool. So I'm going to demo how to use it and just how you can really click around and get a lot of information, and then you guys will be able to log in. One thing you're going to have to do before you can leave this is your exit ticket, and this is where you have to write down for me your first and last name and your top career choice. You have to leave with one career choice because that is what we're going to use when you go on your service credit union field trip in whenever that is in a few weeks. And so that's the career that you'll use as an example for all the activities that day. And I think you'll be able to find a career. I'll show you how to log in when you guys have your Chromebooks up. So you're going to do the Choices Explorer, and it'll give you a lot of questions to start. There's a little link called Start with a quick quiz, and it really isn't very long. All right. I'll walk you through it again when you guys have your Chromebooks open. All right.
Boys,
and
you stop talking now, listen.
One thing you are going to very thoughtfully answer all of these questions in a much slower and more thoughtful way than I am. I just want to show you what the results are and what you can do with them. Okay, so I went through my quiz and I've been given a list of my top 20 careers. I'm going to suggest that you open it up and select the top 100 careers for you. The reason is because you might look in some of the results, and I don't want anybody to be discouraged with the top 20, but if you look in the top 100, I'm sure you'll find something. And it's really, once you start looking at, you can click on them and it'll compare your skills and interests with the career skills and interests. And Charlie, can you close that, please? And then you'll be able to really see, okay, in this career of book editor, it looks like I am a little bit more imaginative than what is required, investigative than what is required for a book editor. I'm a little less social than what is required for a book editor, but I may feel comfortable with that and I may just love the idea of becoming a book editor, and that's fine. I just have to go with what what you think you might want to do. But you'll see a whole bunch of different types of fields, from book editor to I've got astronaut. That's pretty cool. Apparently, in my results, a little more realistic in my interests than what I would need to be an astronaut, but I can let that go and say this is really what I want to do. So if that's something I want to do, to find out more, I would click on the links, your skills and interests compared to an astronaut, more information about an astronaut, and these are all links you'll see on the right side of the page. And this is where you'll get a ton of information about that field. You're going to want to use these little tabs over here on the left-hand side. So I can learn at a glance what happens, what an astronaut does. Scrolling down, some of them have little little videos with an interview or something. You can certainly watch that, that's fine. They have information on education and training. So let's see, an astronaut, what they do. If I click the next tab, it's salary and outlook. It'll tell me, are there actually going to be any jobs when I graduate to become an astronaut? Learning about the salary. learning about the education. These are all important components to consider when you're selecting your career. Another thing that's really interesting is an interview. So they have an interview with a person in the field, an astronaut here. And lastly, the getting started, which is just to get a little bit more. So once you've actually selected what career you are interested in, and you've written it down on this exit sheet, you can certainly start exploring any of these other links as well. Any questions for me about that so far? Okay, so everybody go ahead and open up your Chromebooks. And I have written down the website you're supposed to go to here. It's up here as well, so everybody needs to get an exit ticket, and you'll find, actually, can I give you a time? You'll find the login information on the sheet here. That would be great, thank you. So boys and girls, as you're getting to the website, it's bridges.com. Guys, the login is, you're going to have to select where it says student sign in. You're going to have to select site ID. It's a different tab. That's what you are going to type the username and password into. Site ID. So click Site ID.
So this won't turn on. What's the password?
It won't turn on? Okay. So why don't you, let's see if we can find a plug. Hold on 1 second. All right, let's take a few minutes to share with the group, if you're comfortable, what your career choices were or what your experience was with the quiz. Would anybody like to share their job? Marissa.
So I'm going to be a dance therapist like Miss Bowen because she does yoga.
Excellent. So you were inspired by that. Okay. Yes.
Me, I'm going to be a model or a plastic surgeon.
Wow. Okay, that's awesome. Yes. An oncologist. Excellent. So, how about over here? What jobs interested you? Oh, Vivi. Biochemist. Love it. Camden.
Storm chaser.
Ooh, storm chaser. Yes.
Fire resistance.
Fire resistance. Oh, that's pretty cool. Yes, Bennett.
A dude ranch operator.
What is that?
So would you have to relocate out of New England in order to do that?
No.
Of course you would.
Yeah, that's great. Dylan.
Aerospace engineer.
Aerospace engineer, right on. Oh, who else would like to share? Yes, Ethan.
Though it's not on any, though it wasn't any of the suggestions, what I want to be is a film director.
Excellent. Excellent. Henry. An architect. Fabulous. Elliot. Police officer. Great. Brooklyn.
A veterinarian.
Veterinarian. Love it. Paige.
Probably like an anatomy artist, like I draw the human body, like I study.
Yeah, that's great.
These are as long as it goes down completely straight, yep. And then you just there you got it. Right there. It will get wrapped up. Yeah.
I need to make this exactly to the print, and so all this stuff has to be within thousandths of an inch. So I have all these different measuring instruments here to measure everything accurately. So these are called the machinist's best friend. They're called dial calipers. So basically I can take this and I can tell you what this measurement is from here to here. So I can tell you right now that this measures.
I do not. I know the name.
7.
I don't know who he is. I've heard his last name. It's not very familiar.
Well, good morning. I'm Catherine Dill. I am the Diversity and STEM Outreach Program Manager at Portsmouth Naval Shipyard. I'm also an engineer. And today we're at the Hampton Academy Career Fair to talk to 7th grade students about opportunities at the shipyard. We have more than 6,000 folks who work at the shipyard in a variety of areas. And so we brought folks from the trades. I'm talking about engineering. So we have an electrician here today. We have a fabric worker with a glove bag. And then we have a few machinists to talk about the different things that they make and the instruments that they use for measuring. We're making it interactive for the students, so they get to use a glove bag and then they get to actually measure their piece of candy and then take it with them. We have lots of different opportunities, and so we're trying to talk about the different careers that students could have and what they might be interested in, what they need to do when they go to high school, as well as, you know, you don't have to go to college to have a great career, and that's what we have at the shipyard.
Sometimes you get hurt and you need an MRI, right? The M, magnetic.
Yep, this is called laser LiDAR. What you do here, we're inside, so it's only going to do range, so meaning distance and also speed, because there's no cars or anything like that. So what you do is you point us like this wall, about 15 feet away. So if you look in there, there's a red dot. Point it and hold that button down, it'll tell you the distance.
Lieutenant Colonel Antonio was 22 years in the Marine Corps, and I'm teaching Daisy about how to be an F-18 pilot. Sounds good? Jet fighter aircraft. So right now we have a G-suit on, and the G-suit is designed to keep the blood up in the chest cavity so that when she pulls G's like pull on a roller coaster ride, the blood's going to want to come out and drain out of her head, so it keeps the blood in her chest, and basically she'll keep blood up in her head so she doesn't pass out. When pilots pass out on an airplane, is that a good thing, Daisy? What happens? Bad things. They pass out and the airplane crashes, okay? So the next thing we put on what was called a harness. So every jet aircraft has an ejection seat. So you have an ejection seat, and if you're not strapped to your ejection seat, what's going to happen, Daisy? You're going to get stuck in the plane, or when you eject at 400 miles an hour, you're going to get thrown out, and then you're by yourself and you're 30,000 feet, and your parachute and your ejection seat's gone. So you want to be strapped in. Just like when you drive in the car, you want to put your seatbelt on. When you get in an F-18, you want to make sure you're basically strapped into the aircraft. So that's what we have here. There's 4 points of contact right here for the upper body, and then for the waist is down here. The last thing we want to put on when we go flying is our survival vest. So in case you do have to eject, we find ourselves behind enemy lines, we want to take some stuff with us. So just go ahead and put that on. Just like that. Zip that up. So when if I was behind enemy lines, what would I want in my survival vest? What would you like to have? Some water, right? So we have water in here. We have flashlights. We will have a radio that's in here. It's a $1,000 radio, so of course the Marine Corps didn't give it to me. If our radio is GPS, if that's broken, then we have a compass. So this is an old style World War I Korea lensatic compass. We have that in here. We have a survival knife that's in here, right here. We have a little bottle of water. And then over here we'd have flares. So we've got all kinds of stuff. Then I would be allowed to carry 5 pounds of additional stuff. Would you like some Snickers bars when you go flying? Yeah. That's what I would take. Snickers bars, right? Okay, and maybe some Monster if I could fit it in there somewhere. And so I'd use my radio to call search and rescue. They come, basically a helicopter would come get me. And I have a signal device here during the day. And I could signal this way, so it's a nice flashing light. And then at nighttime, we put this on top, and then it's NVG, so it's IR capable, infrared capable. So enemy can't see it if they're not wearing NVGs. Let's see here. So that's it. Last thing, I'm sorry you've seen helicopters hoist people up. So this is how I get hoisted up. So the basically the hoist will come down with a clip. I clip myself in, snapped in, and then I get pulled up. Feel that right there? Okay. When I go flying, I want to protect my head, right? So let's put this one on. Right like that, okay? And then at high altitude, I need oxygen, so I have an oxygen regulator here. It's gonna give me oxygen. Probably smells, right? It's all, okay? Put that on, clip it on, just like that, and she's all hid. Can't even see her face. Okay, right like that, okay? And I'm gonna get a picture. That's it. Daisy, you're awesome. I love it. Okay, here we go. Big smile. Oh, I'm gonna. That sun's right in the. How's it feel? Is it heavy? It's like 25, 30 pounds of gear, so it's a lot. Imagine wearing that in 120-degree weather. It gets really warm. So here we go. 1, 2, 3.
Not when I went to school, no. But that was so long ago. But now in like SST, Secret School of Technology, they have an animal and plant science class, so that would be huge to go to.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah.
Hi, my name is Emma Carey. I work at the Seco Science Center in Rye, New Hampshire, where we do a lot of education about the ocean and conservation. We also have our marine mammal rescue team, which heads out and responds to seals on the beach, as well as the occasional whale. And when there's a seal that needs assistance, we bring them to rehab, and then often they get re-released back into the wild. So we do a lot in terms of conservation and helping the ocean. We try and educate the public about keeping plastic out of the ocean, as well as other things that they can do to help our ocean stay clean.
And this takes probably, it depends on how long you go. If you went every day, it takes 2 months. If you did a couple days a week, it would take you probably about 8 months.
And then you have, hold on, you almost strapped first. You got your seatbelt strap here.
So Emily, the Marine Patrol is the entity within the state of New Hampshire that does basically the boat police. So we'll go on any lake, river, stream, pond, the ocean, and we'll do whatever you picture, say, Hampton Police Department doing on land, we'll do just in a boat.
Is there like a speed limit for boats?
There is, to some extent. Some lakes have an actual, you can't go over 35 miles an hour, for example. And then every other place that doesn't have something like that has a law called the Safe Passage Law. So when you're within 150 feet of pretty much everything out there except the buoys, you have to be at headway speed, which is like a no-wake speed, so nice and slow.
Do you have like sirens on top of the boats?
We do. As some of the pictures, you can see them. We've got blue lights and then sirens. And a lot of times the sirens aren't so that we can cut through boating traffic, but it's so that if we're trying to stop somebody for a boating law that they violated, that they can hear us. Because some boats are really loud, and if the person's not paying attention and looking behind, they're not going to hear us. So if we just tap the siren, it gets their attention. They know, hey, I need to look back, and then we'll make the boat stop at that point. Thank you. You're welcome. Anytime.
Hi, I'm Becca from Cinnamon Rainbows.
We offer lessons for all ages. I think I've taught anyone from age 4 until 70 something. It's so fun. You get a board, a wetsuit, and you go out and just have a good time. So when you come to the shop, you walk in and we have a ton of clothes of all surf brands, and flip-flops, shoes, water shoes, bathing suits, like anything you need for the summer. And then if you keep walking to the back of the shop, you have surfboards, longboards, shortboards, softboards, hardboards, and wetsuits. Wetsuits for the winter. We surf in the winter, believe it or not. So we have thicker wetsuits with boots and gloves and that cover your face too.
Hi, I'm Renee Bedro from the Hampton Recreation Department, and this is my coworker Brandon Madison. We offer a variety of programs, especially for kids. Kind of why we're here today. We're offering a variety of outdoor programs, anything from hiking, kayaking, survival programs. We also have day camps and sport-specific programs where you can sign up for a week-long program or multiple weeks depending on our offerings. We also offer multiple programs for adults, senior citizens, and little kids in the lower age brackets starting around kindergarten. Our big summertime push is usually right when school gets out, and then we're back at it with school programs in September.
My name's Bo Lambert. I'm from Rye Airfield. We are an indoor skateboard park. We service skateboards, bikes, scooters. We have a full retail store. Very vibrant programs for kids. Our biggest outreach is the Get On Board program, where we go to schools and we train phys ed teachers how to teach skateboarding as part of their PE curriculum. We've been in Hampton for 5 years. We actually have been in Hampton probably for going on 15, 16 years through the Park and Rec department coming to us. If you were to visit us on any given day, you could come in, do a general session, you could shop in the store, you could get a private lesson. We're open 360 days a year, and it's an awesome experience. If you want to get your kid to just build some confidence and make some friends for life, bring them to the skate park.
Hi there, I'm Pam Tiberia, and my company is called Spruce Interiors, and I'm an interior decorator and a home stager. So my job when I'm staging is to help realtors sell homes more quickly and for more money. So I work with homeowners to add decorative accents, to clear out the clutter, and to make the property shine and look its best before it goes on the market. And sometimes those clients like what happens in their house so much that they hire me to go in as a decorator in their next house. And I get questions all the time about what color should I paint my walls? What is a timeless and not too trendy option for my kitchen? Can you help me with window treatments? Can you help me figure out what furniture is going to fit in my space? Anything and everything having to do with design and decorating. And I love to work with kids. Here's one of our Hampton Academy students helping me on a project this summer. She was helping me to choose wallpaper for a bathroom renovation. So every day is different. I never know which way I'm going to go, whether I'm going to stage or pick a color or move a couch or hang a picture. And I think that's probably what I like best about my job.
How are you guys doing? My name's Will. I'm an architect with a firm called Harriman. So, in addition to architecture, we do engineering and urban planning as well. We have lots of different people who all work together to make buildings. Basically, that's why we have this activity here with the toothpicks and gumdrop, because it's very similar to what we do, where we take a bunch of materials that don't really mean anything by themselves, but we have an idea and we put those together and we create spaces and buildings out of them. So our urban planners come up with designs for cities. Our landscape architects work with the outside. The architects create the buildings, forms, and working with schools, and
classrooms, the cafeterias, the gyms, making sure all the spaces work well, making sure there's plenty of daylight and the spaces are nice. And then our interior designers help us with finishes, and then the engineers, structural engineers and electrical engineers, they all come together and work to make sure that these little sculptures work really well and that they're great places to be in. Would you like to make a sculpture? So this is part of the process. You just start. There's no right or wrong way. You just begin and you explore and you create something three-dimensional, and that's the whole point.
What's your favorite thing?
Oh, my favorite type of building? I actually really love designing police departments. They're really interesting, and a lot of cops work in places that are not great to work in, and so I feel like I can really help make their work area. Yeah. About 20 years. Do you want to make a sculpture? All right, well, go for it. We also have this, which used to be a tower. So this area right here has suffered from about 10 earthquakes this morning, and so it keeps collapsing. And we've had several students try to rebuild the tower. They've had some moderate success, but an earthquake always comes in and knocks it down.
Well, if it's not me, then I will flip out.
You're going for color specific.
Mine's gonna be not so much.
Hi, I'm Liz Primo. I'm a freelance writer. I have worked with the Atlantic News and for the Hampton Union for a total of about 20 years. Currently, I also work for the town at the Lane Memorial Library and the rec department, and I write lots and lots of press releases for the rec department. I have enjoyed being a journalist all of these years. I think one of the best parts about journalism is being able to meet so many great people, finding out what's interesting to them, what they're passionate about, and just going home and writing all about it and getting it in the newspaper and having a byline. I think it's a great field to get into. I encourage the kids to do as much writing as possible, all kinds of writing, take all kinds of different writing courses that they can get their hands on and get all kinds of experience. A lot of times when they start out in the journalism field, it usually is as a cub reporter, and they can go to all different kinds of things that are going on, events that are going on. For a community newspaper like Hampton, it's a small town, so there are plenty of opportunities to run into people you know. It's a great profession to get into, especially if you enjoy writing, if you're a little bit nosy, like to know what's going on, and if you like to write.
Hi, I'm Molly Buell, and this is Kaylee Jackman, and we work at Better Smiles Dental Care in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. It's a general practicing dentist, so we see all ages for any of your dental needs. To become a dental hygienist, you first have to graduate high school. There are certain classes that you need to take, mostly science and math-based, and then you move on to an accredited college program. There are two different ways, an associate or bachelor's. I went to the University of New England, and that was a bachelor's program, so I ended up getting my bachelor's of science in dental hygiene. So that really helped me kind of get an overall view of all kind of different health needs and different qualifications for patients, as well as clinical based. So after we graduated, we had to take different exams, written and clinical. There was about 4 different ones that you had to get licensed in. And then working at a general dentist, I really enjoy it because we get to see kids, adults, elderly, and a whole different range of health. So what we take is we get to do oral cancer screenings, x-rays, we help with overall health with diet and nutrition, and our main concern is helping the overall effect of your health. So oral bacteria can also cause heart disease. So if you have a healthy mouth, then you have a healthy body. So that's our main goal, is to try to get everybody to brush and keep everything nice and healthy. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kristen DeRoos, and I work at Hampton Physical Therapy right here in Hampton. And we have 2 clinics, actually one in the Hampton location and then also one in Seabrook. One thing that I do is this is basically an outpatient facility, so there's a lot of different places that you could work as a physical therapist, in a hospital, going into people's houses, and specifically for me, this is an outpatient facility. So I'm working with patients that are coming to me after surgeries, after sports injuries, maybe you just have an ache or pain and we're taking care of that. One thing that I'd like to tell you about is a little bit about the education that I have to go through in order to be a physical therapist. At this point, it's now a doctorate degree, so you have to get a bachelor's degree. That can be in any field, but it does help to be in a science-related field. And then you go right into a doctorate program. So the 4-year bachelor's degree and then a 3-year doctorate degree. So there are some programs out there that are also 6-year programs where it makes it a little bit shorter. One thing that you should know about physical therapy is that it's a growing field. So it's something that someone's always going to need. Someone's always going to be injured, have surgery, needs help to reduce their pain and get feeling better. And the best thing about the job is that it's very rewarding. So you're helping to get patients better and feel better and do what they like to do throughout their day.
I'm Betty Moore, and I am the director of the Tech Museum on Park Avenue in Hampton. And I'm here today talking to the students about the museum field and the study of museology. And it can be a number of different things. People tend to think of it as just history, but it can be arts, science, technology. There are children's museums. There's just a variety of things that people can do. The Tech Museum is open 3 days a week year-round, Wednesday, Friday, and Sundays. And we have our concentration is on local history and genealogy. And we are happy to do family groups, individuals. If people have specific questions, they can email us, and we're happy to try and help them on a personal basis. We hope to see you in the future.
Hi, my name is Jacqueline Mee, and I'm with marketing at Timberland. And so one of the really fun things about our job is that we get to do a lot of photo shoots and video shoots, so we get to travel, and all the new product, we get to help tell that story. So some of the education that goes into this, if you're in college right now, focusing on marketing and business, any psychology helps, understanding your customer and the ways that they buy and all that. So.
My name is Casey Chevalier. I work for TD Bank in Hampton. I am a financial service representative, and I've been with the bank for 4 years. I started out as a teller, but what's most important to let kids know is that the bank is only a teller job. There's store manager, global securities, there's small business lending, and a lot of opportunities. It's really important that students going into school get comfortable with accounting and math classes and public speaking, because you do have a lot of conferences and meetings. And you deal with people all day, so being a people person is really important as well.
Hi, my name's Dan Goupel, and I work at Comcast. Thank you for having me again this year. Comcast is a huge supporter in the neighborhood. Obviously, a very big company. With respect to careers, so many different ways that you can go with Comcast. I work in the field, so I get to go into people's houses, but any strength that you have, there's a career at Comcast. If you're good with graphic design, you'd be designing certain things that we would promote. If you're good technically with computers and stuff like that, certainly a spot for that as well. So a lot of different careers at Comcast, and hopefully we'll be here again next year to pitch some of the new products that we're going to be coming out with.
For those of you who don't know, I grew up down in Massachusetts. I wanted to be a police officer since probably at least middle school. Pretty early on, I knew that's what I wanted to do. Where I grew up, my family, we didn't have a lot of money. We kind of had a tough time. But I lived in a town where I could go to school and do well, get into a good college. So I wanted to pay back the town that I grew up in for being able to, even though we didn't have a lot of resources, that I was able to make something. So I wanted to be a police officer in that town. The way it turned out with the testing process and stuff, I didn't get to be a police officer in that town, but I knew that that's what I wanted to do anywhere, really. So I graduated high school. While I was in high school, I took criminal justice classes, I took Spanish classes, I took like extra English classes, because I was told when you become a police officer, it's not all car chases and tasing people for you guys that are obsessed with the taser. It's a lot of report writing, and it is. Almost everything ends up in a report these days, so you're writing a lot. So I took a lot of English classes to be able to write decently, to be able to speak to people. Graduated high school, went to college, I majored in criminal justice. It was a pretty easy choice for me. And got a minor in Spanish, so I kept taking Spanish classes. 4 years of college, I got my bachelor's degree. Graduated in 2010, and I started just applying to police departments like everywhere. I wanted to stay roughly in the New England area, so I was testing. I took tests in Rhode Island, a couple in Massachusetts, a bunch in New Hampshire, some in Connecticut. I was driving, it seemed like everywhere, every weekend to take tests. At first, the process was kind of new to me, so I wasn't doing that well, but from constantly not getting picked, it just motivated me more to keep up with the process and go somewhere. Eventually, I was fortunate enough to get on in Hampton part-time. In 2011, I worked a summer part-time. By the end of the summer, I got lucky with someone retiring, so I got hired full-time and took their spot. I went to the police academy, which we can get into. I worked the midnight shift, which is the overnight shift. It's 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. So hopefully when all of you are sleeping, because no one should be awake during those hours besides us, hopefully. So I worked the overnight shift for a few years. I got promoted to detectives, and I became the school resource officer 2 years ago. So when you were all in sixth grade. And that's how I got here. So our process to get hired is pretty similar to all the other departments. You need to put in an application, like most jobs. We receive your application, then you come in for a written test. It's some basic mathematics, it's a lot of writing stuff, because like I said, the writing is very important in this job. Just really basic knowledge questions, stuff like that. So we say you pass the written test, you go right into the PT test that same day. The PT test is push-ups, sit-ups, a 1.5 mile run, bench press, and there's certain standards that you have to meet to pass. So you have to do, don't quote me on the exact numbers, but a certain amount of sit-ups in a minute. You have to do like 23 push-ups, not timed. And there's different standards for age and gender and stuff. So you pass the PT test, you get scheduled for what's called an oral board. So basically you come in like a week later, you sit down with, it could be me, a sergeant, and the lieutenant, and we just kind of talk to you. Tell us about yourself, where you're from, you know, your schooling, any military experience, stuff like that. Say that we like you, we move forward in the process. You have to take a polygraph, which is a lie detector test, which isn't like what you all see on TV. It's not like, if anyone's ever seen that little like arm that's always moving and it's making like the ink waves and stuff like that. It's not like that. It's all on computers and stuff now. Pass the polygraph test, you go into the background check. So basically me or another detective get assigned your background investigation. And we basically just go into like every detail of your life up to that point. We go to places that you've worked, see what kind of worker you were. We go to your schools, see what kind of student you were, what your grades were like, extracurriculars, sports, discipline issues, which I'm sure there's no discipline issues in here anyway, right? So that's not a problem. But we meet with your family, we meet with your neighbors, we meet with your friends. We try and just find out as much about you as we can. Say that you pass that, you come in finally to meet with the chief. So even after you pass all of these things, sit down to meet with the chief of police, and he basically just interviews you, kind of just repeating the same questions that you've gone over before. And then he makes the final decision on whether we hire you or not. So you can say it's kind of a long process. There's a lot to it. It takes some time. So that's why I try to tell kids now that if this is something you want to do in the future, or even something in that field, that decisions you start making now in middle school can affect that, okay? So if this is something you want to look at in the long term, you need to start making smart decisions now. All right, so we still have 6 minutes. Not a ton of time, but if anybody have any questions about, I know you all had those packets earlier with the questions on them. If anybody still needs some of those questions answered, if you have questions about our department, if you have questions about me, stuff I've done, the TASER questions we can ignore because I think I've answered all those by now anyway. So if anyone has any questions, feel free. Yes, sir. I did have to get pepper sprayed. So before they issued us our TASER, like I said, we have to get tased. So the point is they would like for us to know what it feels like. So if we're going to tase someone, we know what it's going to feel like for them, and we're not just tasing everybody, I guess. So the same thing with the pepper spray. So before we were issued pepper spray, we had to get sprayed. I got sprayed in Hampton, and then when I went to the police academy, you have to get sprayed and then do like kind of a mini obstacle course. So to answer your question, I've been sprayed twice. Nate. Do you want me to come back to you? Okay. The lie detector, or the polygraph, was a little intimidating, even though I was going in telling the truth, so I really had nothing to worry about. It was still a little, if I had lied, it would have known that I was lying, and then they would have told me that I failed the process. But so again, even like the specifics of it are kind of over my head, but they basically have you're sitting on like a pad that measures like if you're shifting your weight or anything. They have like a band that goes around your stomach that measures your breathing. So like if you start breathing really fast or something, they can measure that. There's a camera that's pointed like directly at your eyes. There's a blood pressure cuff. There's a monitor on your finger to measure your pulse. So that's kind of the other intimidating part of it, is you're kind of hooked up to like all these things, but it wasn't bad. They ask you, before you take it, they give you like this big packet that asks just a ton of questions about your life. And they don't go over every single question, but if there's some that they think you might be kind of fibbing a little bit on, they'll focus on those. But they ask you specific questions. Sorry, I gotta walk over, I can't hear you.
What's the strangest assignment or funniest assignment?
The funniest assignment I've had, that could be a lot of them aren't really school appropriate. So I can give you the most recent one, I guess, would be yesterday. I worked, if any of you went down to the beach the past couple of days, I know I saw some of you. It was pretty busy both days, right? So yesterday we had a gentleman that took off running from us. So we were chasing him, and we turned a corner, and a gentleman who happened to be walking by tackled him as we came around the corner. Just out of nowhere, completely unrelated. We didn't know who he was. He just wanted to help out. I wouldn't recommend that if you ever find yourself in that situation, but it was a little surprising. A lot of people do that. In the back, sorry. Someone have their hand up a second ago? All right, Nate. He was not armed. No. he wanted to. I asked him the same question and didn't really get a great answer. Matt.
What kind of college degree?
What kind of what? I have a bachelor's. You don't necessarily need a bachelor's. You technically don't need, for us, any college degree. It's just preferred. So you really only have to be 18 to apply. College degrees, like I said, are preferred. Military experience, if you have any, always helps, but it's not a requirement.
Have you ever had a taser?
I knew that question was coming. Yes, I've used the taser, I think 3 times so far, and it only worked 1 time. So I'm batting .333, which actually isn't that bad. I've had to draw it on people before, but fortunately, I've never had to use it. Any questions from those packets that you all had? Did everybody fill it out at least? Because I heard you can win an Amazon gift card in the raffle. And I want to make sure that everyone... You can have it too. I just want to make sure everyone has a fair chance. If you guys have any more questions, most of you know where my office is, so you feel free any other time. I think we have time for a couple more. Guys, hold up a minute. What's that? What I like best about my job is that anything could happen any day. So it's not, I was never one to really be able to sit behind a desk Monday through Friday. I would just get too bored. So I like that anything can happen on any shift. The scariest experience? I can't really think of one. Typically, any calls we get really where we have to go to a house where someone's armed, or it's reported that someone's armed, and they're inside the house and we're outside. Those can kind of get your pulse racing because you don't know, are they still in the house? Can they see me from inside the house before I even know where they are? So that can be a little scary. Hampton's a very safe town, I will say that. A lot of our calls, I would say the majority of our calls, mostly during the summer, are down on the beach, just traffic accidents, people kind of misbehaving, being disorderly, but overall it's a very safe town. You're very lucky to live here. David. No one has ever shot at me, no. I've had people that were armed on traffic stops that didn't shoot at me, obviously, but that could have happened easily, but I've never been shot. I think that's all we have for time, guys. If anybody has any questions, like I said, you know where to find me. Have a good day.